So now we are going to roll out the pastry and then bake them in the tart shell. So I have the tart molds here. So you can see these are with the bottom loose ones, which is going to be easier to lift and then get the tart out, but this is going to be in as we are going to use it and then bake it as well. So you could buy these which are convenient. If you have the tart molds which has this fixed into this base, never mind, we're just going to brush it with butter and then flour it, so it will be easier for you to get the baked tart molds out. Okay, so I'm going to bake 2 of them, so I have 2 rings. So you will need as many tart rings as you want that you need to bake, or you could bake it in the number of tart shells you have with a dough, and then if you have leftover dough, put it back into the refrigerator, and once the first batch is done, then you take it out and then continue rolling this to repeat the same process again. So that is a circle cutter, and after rolling this pastry into the desired thickness, which I'm going to show you, I'll use a circle cutter to cut them into discs. So you want to pick up a circle cutter that is a little bigger than the tart shell that you are using. Too big is obviously going to waste your rolled pastry. So get a circle cutter that fits inside the tart mold, and that's some flour because the dough could get sticky while rolling. So you want to sprinkle your counter with a all-purpose flour. It's a plain all-purpose flour, so we can avoid getting the dough sticking to the rolling pin. So that's the rolling pin which I'm going to use it to roll the pastry. So I have rice here. You could use lentils or pulses in this place. This will be used for blind baking. I'm going to show you how to use it. If you have rice handy, then use rice, or if you have any of the pulses or the lentils, you could use that as well in this place. And let's move on to rolling out the pastry. I'm going to keep these tart shells aside. I'm going to pick them once I have rolled. So this is the dough. It's quite firm now, but not too hard. Okay, so but the dough is good to get rolled now. I'm going to sprinkle all-purpose flour and check if the outside and the inside is all the same consistency, because once you put this in the freezer, the outside will start firming up faster than the inside. So once just roll it and then make a even consistency ball and then flatten it out, because anyway we are just going to roll it out. Then use a rolling pin. I'm going to look for about 3 mm to even 4 mm thick sheet. Just also focus on the edges. So don't roll it too thin, because once we cut and then lift to place it on the tart mold, it could expand and then get thinner again. Okay, so I'm just going to remove off the excess. I'm going to wrap it back again, make a dough. And this needs to go into the fridge because it would have warmed up while working. So put it in the fridge to get back and work on that. Now that's the tart. This is a Teflon coated tart base, so it's not going to stick. So there's not it's not necessary to butter or flour tart mold like this. But if you have an aluminium tart pan, then you need to brush it with butter and then also sprinkle with all-purpose flour, so you can get the tart out. Okay, so into this I'm going to lift and put the sheet inside, and then gently press it on the edges and get it to the edge of the mold. The circle cutter was just the right size. There is not going to be any excess. Just making sure the thickness is just right, and the shape is also important to be good. So I'm just going to press it well. So pressing on the edges is going to give you the proper shape of this mold. But while pressing, make sure you are not thinning down the side. So you want to get the tart shell out properly baked without breaking. Okay, so the one is done. So I'm going to do the same thing to the second mold as well. Just fit it in. And just get to the edges. And press it around. Okay, so once you have the tart molds filled, the next step is to use a fork and then make holes. We are calling it docking. So you need to make holes on the bottom of the tart base, because this is basically a similar to cookie dough. So if you are going to constrict the cookie dough within this tart shell, not allowing it to expand on the sides, now it is going to puff up, but we don't want that. We just want the tart base to be flat. So to allow the vapor during the baking, the moisture in this dough is just going to steam out, and if you are not going to allow it to come out using these holes, it could puff up, it will puff up. So to avoid that, you need to, because you are blind baking the shells, you need to poke them using a fork. So you will have the bottom flat without it puffing out during baking. Okay, so even after that, because having this tart come out exactly in this shape is very important, because this is the shell and this is the cavity in which we are going to add the filling. And if this is going to expand, then the area in which we are going to add the filling is going to be really less. But in a tart, the filling is the king, and we need to allow more space for that. So we have to do these steps so the tart base just stays how it is and not expand. So the next step, I had the rice, so I'm just going to show you what step we are going to do. So I have the cling wrap here. So I'm just going to place the cling wrap on top of the shell. Okay, so into this I'm just going to add the rice. So this is nothing but adding some weight, and that takes the shape of the tart base as well. So the rice is just going to get hot in the oven and then come back as it is. But you could have the portion of this rice or pulses or lentils that you're going to use, and put it back in a box or a container to use back again for the same purpose. So this is for blind baking, and this is going to retain the shape of the tart while it's getting baked and then come back as a baked shell. So that is going to allow us to have a beautiful pastry base that we could use it to add fillings. Okay. So now this needs to go into the oven to get baked at 180 degrees Celsius, but right now the butter is quite soft because we've been working with it. So we pop this in the refrigerator for 15 to 30 minutes until we have this dough firmer, because we don't want to pop this into the oven and allow the butter to melt immediately. So we want to give it and then have it slow baked. So refrigerate it for 15 minutes to 30 minutes, after which take this together with the cling wrap and the rice and bake it in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius. It also should be preheating at 180 degrees Celsius until you are ready to put this into the oven, and bake this for 10 minutes with the rice and the cling wrap on, and that is going to bake the edges and then also firm the dough up. And after 10 minutes pull it out and then remove the cling wrap together with the rice, and then again bake just the empty shell in the oven and bake for another 10 minutes and wait to see the shell is going to turn golden brown. And after the second half of the 10 minutes, look for the color and then wait until golden brown, and after the 10 minutes, which is the second 10 minutes, pop it in the oven every 2 minutes once to wait to check for the color. And once you have a beautiful golden brown tart shell that's baked, then it is ready to go to have it filled. Now let me get to the process of popping it into the refrigerator, baking it for the first 10 minutes to remove the cling wrap with the rice, and then bake it for another 10 minutes. And once I have a golden brown beautiful tart shell that's baked, I'll get back to you to show you how it looks. So the tart shells are baked, and now we can just lift and then check. The base out of this tart mold comes out, and this is the empty blind baked tart shells. You see we have both of them baked. Okay, so now how do you store them? Because the tart shells you can bake ahead of time and keep, and then and maybe you will have a lot of tarts to make any time. So, and maybe you don't have as many tart shells as you need, maybe to complete an order or wherever you want to send that. So you could make the tart shells and store them in airtight containers, and maybe you can have bigger boxes, or then maybe you can have smaller ones, and you could stack on top and then store them in the airtight boxes and leave them in the freezer, and they stay good there even for about a month. And then you could take them out, like say if you're going to anticipate orders for a month, and then say maybe you need some 10 tart shells, like for one day you can spend maybe even 100 tart shells in a month. You could spend a day or two and finish making all the tart shells and then store them in the freezer. You could also, to avoid taking up too much space with a box, you could also cling wrap them or maybe put them into ziplocs and then store them in the freezer. Now as and when you need, the fillings can be made, and you could take out the tart shells, baked ones, from the freezer and then fill them, and then they are ready to go. So we have made the tart shells, and then all this I am going to put it into the freezer, and now we will get back when you are going to look into some of the other lessons where I am going to teach you different ways of filling the tart shells.